The way that we're going to do this is we're actually going to start at the bottom of the list with kind of a fun team, and then gradually we will move up. And Doug, you and I will comment on Mike's rankings, and we will move teams around a little bit to where we think they should be.
We are starting out on the MASH list, which of course is where the Baltimore Ravens go. Everybody got hurt last year. All of their backups got hurt. I know they are getting a bunch of guys back, but I stuck them here for now so that you guys can help guide me as to where this team should go.
I mean, I think when you talk about actually the talent that they have, assuming guys are back healthy, this is a really good secondary. Humphrey, Peters, now you have Marcus Williams, now you have Kyle Hamilton, you still have Chuck Clark if you want to play three safeties. Like, this is actually, I think, one of the better secondaries in the league now that they're between the guys they're getting back and then the guy they signed and then the guy they drafted.
This is the highest bump I have for any of the secondaries. I know we're going to talk linebackers, but I focused on secondaries. I have them going from MASH to B.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I would put them in B also.
Highly interesting safety group. Chuck Clark can play box backer where he belongs. Marcus Williams can hang out in the deep third. And Kyle Hamilton can do anything. My favorite player in this draft class. I know the AGL for the secondary last season has to be nuts, which makes me think it's going to move back to their favor. Marcus Peters is still recovering from the ACL. I get that. Might be ready for training camp. Yeah. But if he comes back strong, it allows Marlon Humphrey to avoid getting everything thrown at him, literally. And Jalen Armour-Davis is a guy, kind of an underrated rookie prospect. They got him in the middle rounds. Even if they have spot injuries here and there, I think their secondary is fine. I wrote a piece a couple weeks ago on their safety group because I was so high on Hamilton. They may have the NFL's most interesting safety trio. Yeah. And I think that's going to be the spine of their coverage.
Do you think that's what's happened? Do you think the Ravens are going to play a lot of three safety stuff?
Absolutely. And now they may put because Hamilton played a crap ton of slot. And in that regard, it's going to be a nickel or a dime, and he'll be a slot defender, not necessarily a safety. But I think the three safety, and Mike McDonald, their new DC, has said this, that the three safety group is going to be the foundation of our defense. So I think under Wink Martindale, it was blitz, 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 and it was very static in the back. This is going to be the exact opposite. So it may take a few minutes for everyone to get on the same page, but I think they'll be fine.
Let's talk about the teams you have in F.
Yeah, I'm going to give all three at once here. The Atlanta Falcons, who I can't name. I think I have Casey Hayward and a bunch of guys I can't name. The Kansas City Chiefs, who might get some debate, but remember, they've lost a lot of pieces in that secondary, including the Honey Badger. And this one might be a little more controversial. Obviously, they drafted Sauce Gardner. They got some good guys at safety, the New York Jets. So those are the three teams I gave an F to.
Last year, were the Jets an F? Yeah. This year, with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reid and Whitehead, I feel like they should be a little bit higher. Atlanta absolutely should be higher because of AJ Terrell. AJ Terrell's charting stats were insane. He was something like
Terrell is the NFL's, he's the best cornerback no one's talking about. Their safety group is a big bunch of meh. I get that. Yeah. But when you have two good outside cornerbacks, that's more than a lot of teams have who are higher on this list. Terrell is legitimately great. You can get things done with a better than F degree. I had them going from F to C minus. Jets from F also to C minus. And I think if there's one defense that could be sneaky good in coverage this season, I'm starting here. Sauce is rookie Richard Sherman. No less an authority than Richard Sherman himself told me this a couple months ago. He's going to take some lumps, but he's also going to play over his skis at times in the workout. DJ Reid was highly effective in a Seattle defense that did nothing to accentuate the strengths of anybody last year. They're still putting this together, but I think this could be a surprising unit.
I guess I would lean towards D, just because you don't quite know what you're going to get out of Sauce yet, but it's definitely higher than F.
And then the Chiefs, I went from F to D. Losing Matthew is a major hit. He's one of those glue guys who just holds the defense together. I wonder if the Chiefs are going to go heavy too deep. They can play some big nickel with Brian Cook from Cincinnati. Played more single high than anyone in the NCAA last year. They also lost Daniel Sorensen, which is probably good for a couple of years. I think the Chiefs are just going to look so different on both sides of the ball next year.
Yes, they lost Matthew. Less, they lost Ward. They're expecting a lot out of a rookie in Trent McDuffie, but I would put them higher. I would say let's go with D for now.
So we have a couple D's now. Joining them, the Houston Texans, the Detroit Lions, and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I will go first. I'm going to argue that the Jaguars are your F. The Jaguars last year were 31st in pass defense DVOA and 31st with no pressure. I wrote down for every team their top 5 guys. The top 5 guys for Jacksonville are Griffin, Campbell. Darius Williams was good with the Rams, but how much of that was playing opposite Ramsey? And then Jenkins and Wingard are the safeties. Nobody there really moves the needle for me at all. Like, if there's going to be a team that's an F, that's the team that's the F to me.
I like Jenkins a lot. I put him on one of my underrated players lists last year, but he doesn't do enough to move that needle. Griffin is kind of a B+ to C+ corner. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with the F there. The thing with the Texans is you have absolutely no idea which Derek Stingley you're going to get. If it was a 2019 top 5 pick, or the guy who was so hesitant and trying so hard to make things happen, he will be too tentative and then he'll be too bold. There's not a lot of middle ground. So he projects to me as an ultimate boomer bust guy. You also have to wonder, is it going to just be a bunch of bullcrap Tampa 2 from 2005? Sorry, Larry.
Yeah, then it's like, are you judging their pass coverage based on the players or based on the coaches?
Detroit, I'm looking at their situation.
We're waiting for Okudah to someday be something.
He's not a guy who was overdrafted. Like, everybody thought he was the number 1 corner that year.
Yeah, I don't see anything to take him out of F.
Or D, they're in D, which is D sounds about right.
Yeah,
to me.
that's fine. That's fine.
When you're looking at these terrible secondaries, and then you see kind of okay numbers, I think the Houston Texans are an example of that. Is it just, well, the fourth quarter was nonsense? And that's kind of one of the things you have to look at. Like, oh, the secondary looked like it was okay. Well, yeah, they were trailing every fourth. Teams were handing off and sitting on the ball.
They've honestly built a 7-10, 8-9 team. Like, they do not suck. They just have no future. All right, let's hit those C minuses.
Okay, we'll start with a team that's whose secondary is in the news a little bit, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, who just signed Minka Fitzpatrick to a well-deserved extension. I look them over and say most of what they're doing is pass rush oriented, not necessarily coverage oriented, but that was my initial thought.
The interesting thing about Edmonds in the second half of the season, the light went on coverage wise. And I you guys have the splits. I don't have them in front of me, but you have Minka, you have Edmonds. They worked really well together in the second half of the season. I wouldn't necessarily put that on pass rush. I mean, it helps, but they were making plays. Minka is a top 5 free safety. You pay for that, throw that money out the window and go. The real question is whether the Steelers will get good Levi or bad Levi, and the variance can be extreme. DeMonte Kizzy also is a sneaky good box slot addition that will allow Fitzpatrick to roam in the deep third and Edmonds to do other things. But you could see a lot of big nickel in Pittsburgh too. I would put them up to about a B or maybe a B-.
I would say at least C+.
Going with the next C+ team, and that would be the Las Vegas Raiders, who swapped out a lot of guys. They now have Rock Yassin. But again, a team I think of, like, most of their success came from having a great pass rush last year, and they're planning a pretty strong pass rush this year with Chandler Jones joining Max Crosby.
I think this is about right for them.
I might even drop them a bit. I think Hayward was probably their best DB last year, and he's gone.
Really weird numbers for Nate Hobbs.
Yeah.
He was targeted really rarely, but when he gave up a lot per target, which is kind of weird numbers, especially for a slot corner.
With that, I wonder how much it is when you're playing the Chiefs and he's facing all these different guys in the slot. That might have had something to do with it. How much did he have to face Keenan Allen in the slot?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to break down like which receivers we're talking about, but it's interesting. Like he was not thrown at much, but when he gave up big plays.
Raiders were 21st in DVOA against the slot last year, which was actually one of their better rankings. They were not good in pass coverage anyway. I might drop them a bit, maybe down to a D.
All right, let's make them a D.
Next on my C- list is a team that made 2 big draft picks for the Minnesota Vikings.
I'm fine with putting them in C-. That sounds about right to me.
Yeah, when you got guys like Dantzler, Harrison Smith is still pretty good. I'd keep him there. I don't have a problem with that.
Next, Seattle Seahawks, for a variety of reasons, including a linebacking core that is not particularly well known for their pass coverage and is on the field an awful lot for a linebacking core in the year 2022 with 2 or 3 guys out there. Mixed with everyone's favorite tiny edge rusher, Jamal Adams, not being particularly strong in coverage, being asked to do too much, and just sort of a lackluster group of defensive backs overall.
When you make Jamal Adams the second highest paid safety in the league, only eclipsed by Minka at $17.5 million a year, and you decide to make Jordan Brooks, who was busy in college missing run fits everywhere, and you want to turn him into the next Bobby Wagner, bad teams double down on their mistakes. Now, Seattle's new defensive staff, they run in Sean Desai, and, they had Clint Hurt and all these, Fangio guys. We have the Fangio guys. So we're going to move everything around and have all this, chaos and calamity and whatever. That requires communication. This team has been shopping in the bargain bin, lost in the supermarket. Hello, class. For cornerbacks over the last 3 seasons, and it doesn't make any more sense now than it did then. I would drop them to a D.
From the statistical standpoint, they looked better than that, and I might have given them a little bit more of a boost for coaching, which you're suggesting is probably not appropriate.
I will give Pete Carroll credit. He's, in his 70s, and most guys at that point, they're not flipping their scripts. Pete might not be the coach by the time that defense is good again.
Up next, and I got to apologize to my neighbors who can probably hear me out the window, put the Philadelphia Eagles at C-. I forgot recent news, a lot going on around here. I forgot that James Bradbury is in town. So I'm believing this is a team that should move, I would think, up a little bit.
The safeties are not the highlight of the Eagles secondary. I mean, it's Harris and Epps are the top 2 guys.
Yeah, and Kayvon Wallace is in there as well. But you have strength at corner. Linebackers are not the strength either.
So we think we leave them at C+, or do we want to put them back at C-?
I would give them a solid C because they have 2 really, it's kind of like the Falcons where you have 2 really good corners, but safety is kind of important these days.
All right, we'll leave them at C-.
I have no idea what my rationale for the New York Giants was here, but this is where I put the mighty G-men.
Here is the shock about the Giants from last year. When you look at the personnel, it really looks unimpressive. They were 5th in pass defense on plays without pass pressure, compared to 14th in pass defense overall, 5th versus 14th. When I just looked at the personnel for the Giants, when I just looked at the depth chart and I thought about what do I think about these players individually, I was like, C- might be too high for them. But then when you look at the actual stats from last year of how they performed, it looks like C- might be too low for them. So C- might be exactly right for them.
I mean, the first question I ask when I look at a secondary is there a dominant, tent pole guy you can build the whole thing around? They don't have that.
I mean,
they had Bradbury and he's gone. The second question is, okay, you can still win without the tent pole guy, but how is everyone else? Do you have a bunch of B to C+ guys? I don't really see them either. So I'm not inspired.
You want to move them down?
A little bit. You got no Bradbury, and then when you lose a defensive coordinator who set a lot of this stuff up, what sort of confidence do you have that that's going to continue?
I'll give you 2 more C- teams here. One, the Washington Commanders, who have swapped out some guys, still have some decent talent out there. And another team with 2 high draft picks, slated to probably play major roles in the secondary, the Chicago Bears.
I'm fine with the Bears there. I think there's still some question marks. My notes on the Commanders, they were 27th in DVOA last year, despite a roster stack from front to back on defense, and their defensive coordinator's head is filled with delicious macaroni salad. I'm not feeling it. No.
So I think this is good for Washington. I wouldn't drop them. I wouldn't drop them any lower than this.
Mm-hmm.
Let us move on from the C- to the C+. I'm going to start by putting 2 teams out there. And these are 2 teams I'm going to classify as, well, they've got some good talent and they run shootouts a lot. And their secondary is tested a lot. And those 2 teams are the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys. Starting out, our C+ is going with the Steelers, who are already there.
I would like to move the Packers up to a B+. Alexander's back and healthy. Rasul Douglas was maybe the best in-season signing of the last half decade. Eric Stokes is coming along. You got Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos at safety, good enough. An improved front will make that backfield better. And Devondre Campbell, I'll mention again, best linebacker they've had since Ray Nitschke. I'm kind of looking at this as a potential Super Bowl defense.
I think you're overrating Rasul to start out.
Yeah, you're going way up against our projections on their defense. I do get this feeling like Rasul Douglas seems to me like the kind of guy who's going to become a poster child for the inconsistency of cornerbacks.
Right, that's my concern.
Like he had this really great half season, but he's never done anything like that before. Whereas Alexander seems like an exception, like one of the few cornerbacks who is consistent from year to year.
Marcus Williams, who we were talking about before, his passer rating allowed from season to season he's a Brett Saberhagen of safeties. It's like 1 year it's 56, the next year it's 133, then it's 60, then it's like 98.
Antonio Cromartie was like that. Like a lot of secondary guys are like that.
Yep. Cowboys, I'm going to give them a bump to B overall based on Dan Quinn year 2. Diggs and Brown had 15 combined interceptions, 2 outside corners. This is more than 19 teams had. I know interceptions don't mean everything, but they mean something. Now we're going to get a better handle on whether Diggs is Lester Hayes or a more productive Marcus Peters. Losing Kizzy is a hit. You would love to see Malik Hooker play at the level he once did because, God, he was good back in the day. I'm not sure who the deep safety is going to be, but I bumped him a bit up because Dan Quinn knows how to make the most of his players. He did it last year. I think you'll see a bit more stability in that defense overall. Dan is really good with secondaries. He's awesome with fronts. He will mess you up with fronts. So I'd move them to whatever level of B Mike has approved for his tiers this week.
2 more teams. The Tennessee Titans, who had almost made the MASH list because they had a lot of injured young talent last year. I was going to stick them on the MASH list. And I guess another team that could have been on the MASH list, the Carolina Panthers, mainly because of J.C. Horn. They've got Jeremy Chin there. They got a couple other players who could play. I thought bad team, but their secondary looks like it's a potential strength. So I put the Panthers at C+.
Yeah, I think having the Panthers here mean you're basing a lot on J.C. Horn keeping up what he was doing early in the season. I'm okay with that, but I do think it depends a lot on that.
Let's put another team or two out there because there's a team I think you guys are going to want to move up in a second, and we'll see if the Titans are where you want to move up, or if you want to move up, the Indianapolis Colts, because your intrepid friend here had another senior moment. Forgot about Stephon Gilmore and stuck them in the C+ list. They also have Kenny Moore, of course, some other good ball players.
Which Stephon Gilmore?
The problem is, is it a healthy Stephon Gilmore or an unhealthy Stephon Gilmore?
And when we get to the Bills, I'm going to ask the same question.
The thing about the Colts and the reason why I think they belong here and not higher is, first of all, their second outside corner now is going to be Isaiah Rodgers, and losing Kerry Willis, I think, is a thing. Okay. And Gilmore, you can't fully depend on him to be healthy. If he's healthy and he's what he was 3 years ago, I mean, they are absolutely better than this.
Another team that you might want to move up because of the quality of the cornerback plays, the Miami Dolphins, with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, 2 pretty good ball players there. But looking at the statistics, I put them at C+.
I'm fine with them where they are.
Yeah, I'm fine with them here. Another reason not to move them up, 9th in pass defense DVOA, but 25th if you only look at plays with no pass pressure.
Right. And that's the things we were looking at when I was putting this list together. Another team that had, I think, some odd splits, and that's why they wound up in C+, was the Arizona Cardinals, who besides Budda Baker don't blow me away in terms of personnel, but had some pretty good looking numbers.
Yeah, the stats are much better than when you look at the personnel and you think about how good they are. Their stats were really good last year, but then you look at who these guys are and you're just like, it just shouldn't be.
Yeah, cornerback is, how we've been saying that through the entire Cliff era. Cornerback is a question.
If you're just looking at who they have and you're kind of, I would move them down. When you look at their stats from last year, you're kind of moving them up. So I'm kind of thinking this is about the right place for them.
Yeah, I'll give you some more teams because I'm tired of talking about the Cardinals. The Cincinnati Bengals, great safeties, a secondary that was getting tested a lot because they wound up in a lot of shootouts. Some guys at corner I do like. I don't think of as elite players, but Cheedy, for example, is a heck of a player. Last team that I put in C+, a team that was very hard to categorize, San Francisco 49ers, a team I think of as their pass defense success coming very largely from their secondary. It had some injuries, I believe, in the secondary.
The Bengals, I think Awuzie. Well, it's funny because the most improved player on the Cincinnati defense was their defensive coordinator, Lou Amaruno, who for 2 years I was like, did you suffer a head injury? And now you're playing Awuzie off in the first part of the season when he's another one of those press guys. I think Awuzie is really good. If you line him up, don't give him a lot of peripheral stuff. Put him right in the receiver's face. Have him match and trail. He's fine. Jesse Bates, who now wants more money than God because of what Minka got. Von Bell's a decent box guy, but I don't really see anything that makes me want to go, move him up.
By the way, he wants more money than God because the Bengals had one job in terms of their long-term financial planning, and that was to take care of Bates before Burrow and all of them go through. And they didn't do it. They just franchised him. So that's why you have a safety who the market is going up and up, and he's sitting there on the franchise tag smiling. By the way, should the Niners be moved up because of Charvarius Ward?
No, but I think they should not be moved down because of Charvarius Ward.
Fair enough. Let's hit some Bs. We already got some Bs because teams moved up. The New Orleans Saints, just a very strong overall defense. Obviously, some additions to the secondary.
I might even argue for this one to be an A. New Orleans is our number one projected defense for this year. May and Matthew is a great safety combination. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is strong as the nickel. Lattimore is still strong. Adebu's reasonable.
You want to see May stay healthy because he's replacing Marcus Williams as that deep third guy, and he has the talent to do it, and that's a question mark. Lattimore is another one of those boomer bust guys. He will make Hall of Fame plays, and then. But Matthew, a couple of years ago, you could make the argument he was the best free safety and the best slot corner in the league. Not a lot of guys who are the best at two things in the NFL. Right. He's probably still top 10 at both. And again, glue guy. You know what? I'm moving to an A. Heck with it.
Go Saints.
Cleveland Browns just paid Denzel Washington more money than God earlier in the offseason.
Denzel Ward. He wishes he had Denzel.
Did I say Denzel Washington?
Yes, you did.
He wishes he had
Denzel Ward. Anyway, talk about the Browns, guys.
Newsome seems like he's really promising. Ward is very good. I'd be fine with them at B, but I might move them to A because the deep, they've got Ronnie Harrison and he doesn't even start.
Based on a lot of guys in the same defense for the second year, I would like to move them up. I'm just a little uncertain because I haven't seen.
The A's are pretty rare for now, so let's leave them at B.
Next up, the Denver Broncos. In general, Football Outsiders not necessarily high on their overall defense this year, and we think they're somewhat overrated last year due to some, statistical quirks. However, you have the son of Surtain. You have two very good safeties. Ronald Darby's a good player. I stuck them here.
I'm okay with it based on potential. Based on how they actually were last year, I would say no. But I think with Surtain and how much people really, believe in him, I think having them here is appropriate.
Well, the first question I ask again, do you have a tentpole guy? They potentially have two in Justin Simmons, who's been that guy for a while, and Surtain could make that leap this year. I think they have the A question and the B question sorted out. I'd push them up to A.
I would argue to leave them at B just because you haven't seen it yet, but the potential is there.
Here's the difference in my philosophy between the Browns, where I hadn't seen it yet, and the Broncos, where I haven't seen it yet, is what I saw from Surtain when he was on was like, holy crap. And I think you're going to see a lot more holy crap this year.
Next, speaking of you want to see it, but the potential's high, the Los Angeles Chargers with the son of Asante, J.C. Jackson, Derwin James finally healthy, Bryce Callahan at age 47 in the slot, and some half-decent depth as well.
Mike Davis, one of the more underrated zone corners.
Really when he's not being asked to go run around and chase Tyreek, which he won't be.
I am very good with the Chargers being here now that they've got J.C. Jackson.
Yep.
Well, speaking of J.C. Jackson, partially because of the quality of the coaching staff that has proven itself time and time again over the past 20 years, the New England Patriots came in at a B.
Here are my notes from B to C+. Who replaces J.C. Jackson? I'm not worried about the safeties. McCourty, Phillips, and Duggar are great. It's very light in the cover with that cornerback group. I don't see the guy who's going to come up out of nowhere and be great as Jackson did a few years back.
There is no number one corner here.
Now, they won Super Bowls without a number one corner. My problem is who are 2 and 3?
When Jalen Mills got signed, we heard about how, it's great. The Philadelphia finally figured out how to use him in the slot some and as a safety some and move him around. And then the Patriots just kind of stuck him out as the second corner. And now he's the number one corner? No. So I'm definitely going with move the Patriots down to C+.
Okay. No problem.
And Jonathan Jones, slot corner Jonathan Jones, underrated.
The Los Angeles Rams, Jalen Ramsey, et cetera, et cetera. Go.
All right, here's my argument about the Rams. I don't know how they're that much different from the Falcons, because Ramsey and Terrell are both outstanding, but the other corners now, you have Hill coming back from Cleveland and you have Long, but I actually think B might be too high, even though they have Ramsey.
I agree with you on safeties, and that's why I would take them. And I would imagine this is another team that was highly dependent on pass rush.
6th in pass defense DVOA. 24th when there was no pressure.
Ramsey can be beaten in certain ways, like a lot of taller, more angular corners.
Right.
Smaller guys will give him fits. The quick little mice going through the field. I think C.
Yeah, let's make them C+.
Yeah, that's a C. I move them down.
All right, that leaves us with 2 teams left.
Putting the Saints in the A list in my preliminary, based on looking at the numbers, particularly the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team I think of as a pass rush-based team, but you have the son of Antoine. Logan Ryan's going to be playing safety for them. And a lot of younger talent over the last couple of years, I think, is developing a very strong secondary.
And I think the numbers from last year are hard to argue that they're that meaningful, given the number of injuries that this team had at the cornerback position last year. Yes, exactly. So I'm actually reasonably fine with the idea that they're an A.
I'm moving to B because I don't I'm not completely sold on the corners. I love Winfield. He's becoming everything they want him to be. Jamel Dean and Mike Edwards have their moments. Edwards is kind of that hybrid safety corner guy. Carlton Davis is a good player, but he strikes me as a B corner they put in A situations too often, getting his ass lit up by Tyreek Hill for 3 touchdowns in one half of football.
Okay.
This is an obvious example. I don't see the A here. I'm perfectly fine with B or B plus or B hieroglyph or whatever. I just don't see him as an A.
Doug's got me. Let's move him down to B.
Okay. Now I'm going to hear it about this team in the S tier. I know I'm already hearing about it. Left alone in the S tier with the Buffalo Bills. Trey White. Yes, I came with the confidence that we were going to see the healthy Trey White. We have outstanding safeties. We have a first-round pick. I know I'm not a big fan of like the first-round rookie starter, but I think Elam is a heck of a ball player. Strong linebackers in coverage and a very strong overall scheme.
Fantastic safety.
Pushing up for S tier for a team that is always in the crosshairs last year and will be this year.
My argument would just be, I don't think any team deserves an S because I feel like if you're starting a first round rookie, you can't be considered the elite of the elite. As good as White is, as good as the safeties are.
I want to move him from S, from $sign to A. If you're going to, you have to bet on Tre'Davious White not only being healthy, but not starting that little degrees of, Poyer and Hyde are the best safety duo in the league. Poyer in particular is criminally underrated.
Comparing Buffalo on deep passes to every other team in the league is like something like 4 yards a pass less than any other team in the league or something ridiculous. It's like
Poyer's opponent pass rating a lot on targets is something like 13.2. You're 3 times better off throwing it into section 230 than you are.
Yeah, it was insane how good the safeties were on
and the thing about his run defense, it's a little overcooked on the negative because they don't ask him to do that. What they do have to do is blitz, and he's really good at blitzing. I think Tre'Davious White has been the best zone corner in the NFL at his best. His footwork belongs in the Royal Ballet. There's not a thing he can't do. He's also a great man defender when they ask him to do that. Teron Johnson is one of the best slot corners in the league. Dane Jackson has potential. And at times it's good to move on from those players whose potential just bewitches you, that you're going to live with all the oof moments. And now that's Pittsburgh's problem. I would take him down to A. I think 2 A teams is fair. I just can't put the Bills on that super penthouse level until I see what Tre'Davious White is.
Well, are we comfortable with the tiers now?
Yeah, they look pretty good to me.
Yeah, I think the middle class looks good. I think your 1% is fine. Yeah, I'm cool with that.
All right, that's our tier list. Thank you, Doug, for joining us. We really appreciate it, man.
Always a pleasure, guys.